As of last weekend, Smash Supermajors are back with Riptide. We've had big tournaments back for a while now. We had like InfinityCon, had around 500 people and a few top 50 players. Summit was amazing, but it wasn't an open bracket. And Europe and Japan have had a few bigger tournaments, but not with a lot of out-of-country contestants. So as far as 1,000 plus open entrant tournaments with all of the best players in the world, this is our first. So I want to look at Riptide as the start of a new era. What are the storylines popping up around the players, the characters, the regions, and what are the numbers to back up these narratives that are emerging out of the Smash community? We're going to be looking at the top 8th of bracket, aka the top 12.5%, aka top 64 for this tournament. This was a precedent set by PG Stats for some of their reports over quarantine, and I'm going to stick to that number. And with that, my name is Ankle, and these are the stats and storylines of Riptide.
Yo! Okay. Oh my god.
All right.
Oh my god, bro, are you kidding me?
Oh,
what kind of interactions are these?
Diddy Kong is certainly here, ready for the monkey business. And yeah, you talked about Mars being warmed up. Mars is definitely warmed right the hell up.
BTSSMASH has only published their VODs for top 24, and I'm not going to dig through the two 12-hour VODs to find the sets I'm talking about, so I'll have to rely on some footage from certain players and characters at other tournaments. I'll try to record the sets live next time. So, let's start with the hotly contested issue of Wi-Fi. Now, to be clear, if I call a player a Wi-Fi player, I am not saying that they are carried by Wi-Fi or that they were not relevant before Wi-Fi. Players like Cola and Send were already on the PGR. Epic Gabriel was ranked in Central Florida for a long time, and he was not far behind Goblin, who's already on the PGR.
Grab territory, side B might do it anyway, that's gonna kill it!
And the narrative that Spargo is going to be the next best player in the world was already well developed before quarantine. When I refer to them like this, I'm saying that they were some of the top players during the Wi-Fi era, and most of them had a pretty big jump in rankings. They were the face of its competitive scene for some amount of time. And so with that being said, let's see how they did this weekend. Send, who was seeded for 17th, got out at 97th. He's been on a near flawless run at locals since they returned. He even picked up some top level wins over Light and Louis Money at the MSM Last Chance qualifier. But here at Riptide, he got knocked out of winners in pools by Arconi v Me Swordfighter, who tied with Send at 97th. He then made it out of pools with a few more wins, but he ultimately fell to Shattuck, the young Corrin player who ended up making top 64 at this event. This makes for the only time Send has not made top 64 at an offline major. Sent Smash and Splash 5 over 2 years ago, just a few months into Ultimate's lifespan. Similarly, Cola, hot off of a great Summit performance, was seeded for top 8, but he got out at 65th after losing to Sharp and Base Mage. Didn't take a game in either of the two sets. A bad day for the newly sponsored Roy, but certainly not entirely illustrative of his skill. Given his top 8 at Summit with several top 10 wins, and his stellar local performances, along with his pre-quarantine major performances rarely dipping outside top 32, much less top 64, I'm sure we'll see Cola and Send continue to place well at future majors. One rough bump in the road is not a sign that these players' fates are sealed. In better news, Epic Gabriel had a super solid run. He outplaced his seed by 1 when he ended at 13th place. With losses to the best player in the world and the best player in his region, you can't really blame him either. He picked up wins on Toast, Yumu, and a couple more people.
On the gyro, right at Mario, recatching it. All right, Gabe coming alive here in the second half of the game.
This was a solid performance that we wouldn't have expected out of the young Rob May in pre-quarantine, with his 49th at Big House 9 and his 129th at Genesis 6. Congrats to Gabe, and I can't wait to see where he goes from here. And as far as relatively new players go, Yanni had an absolutely amazing run. He's played the game for a while, but his Luigi hadn't really competed much offline. When Steve dropped last October, however, Yanni made a name for himself online as one of the best reps for the character, proving it this weekend. With wins over Myron, Atada, and Dabuz, Yanni ended his run at 9th place, losing to Meister in a close Game 5 set with Goblin. And despite what this PG Stats video that released shortly before Riptide proposed,
that DLC was going to be a problem at Riptide, but not this DLC.
Steve made some waves this weekend. Jake, one of the other best Steve players, beat his seed to break into top 32 with wins over Chag and Wisdom. And two other Steve players, Onan and Eden, made some of the biggest seeding versus placement differences imaginable. They were both seeded in the mid-800s, projected to place 769th out of 1,024 people, and both placed at 49th. Between these four players, Steve was one of the top 3 most represented characters in Riptide's top 64. As for the other Wi-Fi DLC character, Minmin only made a brief appearance from Dabuz, but that was far from his main character this weekend. He preferred to use mostly Olimar. Sephiroth barely made a splash, with Ned underplacing his seed, losing to Kobe and Miles. Nico, who plays Cloud and Sephiroth, outplaced his seed to break into top 64, but without any super notable wins. And Tweak Sephiroth made a brief appearance in top 8, but we'll get there. Between them, there were 3 Sephiroths, but given the players piloting them, he generally underperformed. Aegis, on the other hand, who were aggressively represented at Summit, didn't fare much better. Spargo, our last Wi-Fi player, made a top 8 run that we'll cover later, but even then he started dipping his toes into Cloud again. Leo barely touched the character, leaving the only solo Aegis rep as Cosmos, who drastically underplaced this weekend. He was seeded to place 9th, but with early losses to Atada and Myron, he ended up out at 49th, just barely squeaking into top 64 and dropping 5 whole placements from what his seed projected. As for non-DLC characters who are represented in this bracket, we have a fun few rare characters making their appearance. Bowser Jr., Corrin, Duck Hunt, Richter, and Samus all had reps in top 64. As a Falco main, I can't help but notice that the Bird had a little bit more presence here than usual, with 4 different representatives in top 64. Tilde took the lead at 17th place, along with Ko-Fi, Polonian, and Isman. I think it's pronounced Isman. However, by far, the most prevalent character was Rob, with 6 representatives. I don't agree with the narrative being pushed that this proves that Rob is like a top 5 or even a top 1 character. Just because a character is popular doesn't mean that they're busted. There's skill floor versus skill ceiling stuff to talk about, but regardless, the Robs absolutely showed up. One Rob, Anathema, made the biggest upset of the tournament, knocking Mars into losers, where he would then lose to Leon at 33rd, making for the biggest seed to placement discrepancy of the tournament. For reference, the difference between 3rd, where Mars was seeded to place, versus 33rd is a difference of 8 placements, the same difference as Odin and Eden, those 2 Steve players from earlier. Another Rob, Zamba, was the only player to take a single game off of Tweak before top 8. I don't have the VOD, so there's a chance that Zamba was actually playing Roy, but regardless. The main Rob you'd be expecting to see, Wadi, actually played a lot of Mewtwo instead this weekend, taking wins off of MVD and Spargo with his new dual main combo. However, he didn't make top 8 after failing to overcome Tweak and Louis Money. Before we get to that top 8, however, let's talk about regions. Riptide took place in Ohio, and the Midwest came out to play on their home turf. The count gets a little bit messy depending on who or what you consider Midwest, but by my count, about 1/4 of the top 64 players were Midwest, including a lot of sleeper picks like Loaf, Yumu, and Tony Z Tank. Central Florida popped off even harder though, with less representatives but much stronger placings, with Goblin in top 8, Epic Gabriel and Kobe in top 16, and then Jake and Polonian also in top 64. Tri-State, as always, was very present. Tweak and DeBuzz made top 8, Miles, Leon, and Tilde were all in top 32, and there were 4 other players in top 64 as well. You might think that New England wasn't very present given Mars's early loss and light DQing before the event began, but Sharp made 9th and Ling Ling made 13th, verifying that the region still made a mark. There wasn't very much out-of-country representation besides Mexico, who was actually the most represented here at the very top. Leo, Spargo, and Meister all made top 8, and Chag and Big Boss made top 64 as well. And now, let's look at that top 8. Out at 7th were DeBuzz and Louis Money. We expect DeBuzz here, of course, but he still seems to have some problems with his characters. After having a rough time at Summit with mostly Min-Min, he stuck to Olimar this bracket. It worked for the most part, but under pressure he was still kind of randomly swapping around with no luck. He lost to Yanni and Goblin, 2 great players, but ones typically considered a little bit far from his top 10 rank. With wins over Icy Mist, Zenodo, Tilde, Loaf, and Sharp, he still had a great run this weekend, and I'm excited to see how his cast evolved from here. Louis Money, on the other hand, was a surprise in top 8, outplacing his seed by 4 spots and going on a run through Pandarian, Anathema, Miles, and Wadi after getting knocked out of winners early by Zamba. He lost in a close Game 5 set to Spargo, forcing him off of the cloud he thought he had settled on for most of Sunday. A great run in the top rep for both Palu and Fox, given that the usual top reps were missing. Out at 5th were Meister and Goblin. Meister, once again, we expect to be here. He entered top 8 from winners, only dropping games against Uncivil Ninja and Kurama, and he also beat Goblin and Yanni on his way there. But ultimately, he got team killed by his fellow countrymen MK Leo and Spargo. He had a great run, and even took his first offline game against Leo since Smash Summit 2, where Leo was playing Marth. We've been seeing Meister talk about working on a secondary for some of these harder matchups, so I really can't wait to see how he adapts in the future. Goblin was actually a big surprise in top 8, however. After getting knocked out of winners early by Meister and being seeded to place 33rd, he went on an absolute tear through losers, beating Myron, Stroder, Mutace, Gabriel, Yanni, and finally DeBuzz in top 8. Half of those sets were Game 5, and not a single one was a clean 3-0. This arduous run was put to an end by an equally on-fire Elegant in an absolute clencher of a Game 5. A hard-fought run proving that Goblin still has a place in the conversation for best Roy in the world, even if he wasn't active during the online era. And his performance here got him signed onto Moist Esports, so I can't wait to see him travel even more from here. Elegant had a sneaky run up to 4th this weekend. After beating Jake and Skittles, he was seeded to play against Mars, but lucky for him, this was the round where Mars had just got upset by Anathema. So Elegant seized his chance, beat Anathema in a 3-1 set, and then beat Ling Ling to make it into top 8. He then lost to Tweak, not able to quite keep up with the version 2 of this top 3 player, but showed he still had fire in his belly in his set against Goblin. However, after that, he lost to Spargo. An amazing run from Elegant, placing just outside 3 of the best players in the world right now. Spargo, like Summit, ended his run at 3rd, just short of Tweak and Leo. An early loss to Wadi sent him on a loser's run through a Leon that was fresh off of beating Mars, Kobe, Ling Ling, Louis Money, Meister, and Elegant. An absolute gaggle of the best players in bracket this weekend. And even rediscovering his love for Cloud. He was able to take game 1 from Tweak in losers finals, but after 3 insanely close games, Tweak clutched it out. And even if Spargo isn't at the level of Tweak and Leo yet, it's worth realizing how far he's come. Him placing 3rd here is not a surprise, and it would have absolutely been a surprise 2 years ago. Congrats to Spargo on another amazing run. He seems to be taking it really well, and I can't wait to see him continue to grow and catch up to 1 and 2. And so of course, it's only right that the first Super Major back has Leo versus Tweak in Grand Final. As mentioned earlier, Tweak had only lost 1 game prior to meeting up with Leo, beating Kobe, Wadi, and Elegant on the way. Leo's run wasn't as clean, but he still beat Epic Gabriel, Sharp, and Meister before beating Tweak in Winners Finals. And he was doing it with almost entirely solo Byleth, a decision that he maintained into a set with Tweak. And for the first 2 games, it looked like it might be a repeat of Summit. Tweak maybe didn't look quite as dominant, but he still took a 2-0 lead. But as the numbers show,
if Tweak is up 2-1 against 2-0 against me, it means danger.
Leo took the set back in a reverse 3-0, taking game 5 with a decisive 3-stock, still using all Byleth, silencing anybody saying he needed to switch to Aegis or Joker. Tweak made it back to Grands after beating Spargo, but it was no use. He tried switching to Sephiroth and promptly lost 3-1, again ending with a 3-stock. It's nearly impossible to say how their rivalry will develop from here. These two have so much history, and now, between Summit and Riptide, they've both made each other look absolutely powerless in the face of their new mate, proving that they're both incredibly capable and able to adapt to each other. I am beyond excited to see where their head-to-head goes from here. And so with that, congrats to Leo on winning Riptide, the first Super Major back. Congrats to everybody in top 8 and everybody else who had an amazing run this weekend. I can't wait to see everybody at the next major. My name is Ankle, and this has been Stats and Storylines of Riptide. Thanks for watching.